Picture a house made of dirt. Not a house with a dirt floor. A house whose walls are dirt, whose roof is dirt, whose ceiling drips mud into your coffee when it rains. Now fill it with a rattlesnake that got in through the wall last Tuesday, a baby with a fever, a stove that eats twisted grass instead of wood because there are no trees for 40 miles, and a wind outside that's been screaming without stopping for 11 days. That's a homestead on the Dakota plains in 1882. The newspapers back east call it the Garden of the World. The women who live there call it something else, when they have the breath to call it anything at all. A place where you could bury a child in the morning and still have to milk the cow by evening, because the cow doesn't care, and the cow is the only thing standing between your other children and starvation. We're going back there tonight. Not as tourists admiring the big sky and the waving grass. We're living it. One woman, one stretch of days. Everything she would have felt in her hands, her back, her lungs, and her heart. So I make these history stories, and honestly, I have no clue if anyone actually sleeps to them, or if you're all just lying in the dark thinking about hailstones the size of hen's eggs punching through a sod roof. Either way, subscribe if you want. Get comfortable. Here we go. The needle goes through the canvas and into your thumb. Not deep, just the tip, just enough to raise a bead of blood the size of a pinhead. And you don't even flinch anymore. That's the thing. 6 months ago, you would have gasped. Now you just press the thumb against your skirt, wait 2 seconds for the bleeding to stop, and push the needle through again. Because the wagon cover has to be patched before your husband leaves for the railhead tomorrow, and the light is dying, and there is nobody else on this entire claim who is going to do it. Your name is Ada Kirstine Larson. You are 24 years old, and right now, at this exact moment, you are the only adult human being for 6 miles in any direction. Let me say that again, because I need you to actually feel it. Not just hear it. 6 miles. In any direction. If you stood on the roof of your house, and you could, the house is dug into the side of a low rise and the roof is sod, you could walk right up onto it. You would see grass. Grass to the north. Grass to the south. Grass rolling west in long swells like a frozen ocean. Grey-green in summer. The colour of a dead man's face in winter. Somewhere out in that grass is the Anderson claim 6 miles northeast, where another woman is sitting in another dirt house doing exactly what you're doing. You have spoken to her 4 times in 8 months. You think about her the way a drowning person thinks about a piece of driftwood. Your husband, Niels, is 2 hours away with the oxen, cutting hay in the bottom land by the creek. Your daughter, Ingrid, is asleep in the corner of the one room that is your entire home, and she is asleep because she is sick, and she is sick in the way that makes your stomach fold in on itself every time you look at her, because the nearest doctor is in Yankton, and Yankton is 3 days away, and the doctor charges more for a visit than Niels earns in a month. And anyway, by the time you got word to him, it would be over, one way or the other, so you sew. Because the wagon cover has to be patched. Because on the frontier, the thing in front of you is always the thing you do. And you have learned, the way you learn that fire is hot, that if you stop to feel everything you're carrying, you will sit down in the grass, and you will not get up. This is the part nobody put in the songs. You've heard the songs. Everybody back in Wisconsin heard the songs. The government will give you 160 acres free just for living on it. Uncle Sam is rich enough to give us all a farm, and that was the actual lyric. People actually sang that in parlours with piano accompaniment. The railroad companies printed pamphlets in Norwegian and Swedish and German and shipped them across the Atlantic by the crate load. and the pamphlets showed pictures of wheat fields and neat white houses, and your mother-in-law read one out loud at the kitchen table in Koshkonong, and Niels's eyes went bright. And 18 months later you were standing on a treeless plain watching your husband cut the first strip of sod with a break-in plough, and the sod came up in long black ribbons, and he stacked those ribbons like bricks, and that was your house. Not a house made of wood sided with the earth, a house made of earth, walls 3 feet thick, one window, real glass, which cost $1.25 and travelled 200 miles in a barrel of oats so it wouldn't break. And when Niels lifted it out unbroken, you both stood there and looked at it like it was the crown jewels of Norway. The Homestead Act of 1862. Sign your name, pay a $14 filing fee, live on the land 5 years, improve it, and it's yours. 160 acres. In Norway, the farm Nils's family had worked for 200 years was 11 acres, and they didn't even own it. That's the deal. That's why you're here. Here's what the pamphlets left out. They left out that a woman on a claim works a day that starts before the sun and ends after it, every day, with no Sundays off for the fire, because the fire has to be fed, and no holidays for the cow, because the cow has to be milked, and no sick days for anyone, ever, for any reason. They left out that you would go weeks, without seeing another woman's face. They left out the wind. God, they left out the wind. There is a sound the wind makes coming across 300 miles of open grass with nothing to break it. A long, low, hollow moan that never rises and never falls and never, ever stops. And it gets into the sod walls and into your ears and into some soft place behind your ears. And there were women. This is documented. This is in the records of the territorial asylums. There were women driven genuinely mad by it. Prairie madness, the settlers called it, like it was a weather condition. Which, in a way, it was. You're not mad. You want that on the record. You're tired in a way that has soaked all the way down into your bones, and there is a sound you make sometimes when you're alone at the well, a sound that is not quite crying, but you are not mad. Not yet, says a small voice in the back of your head, and you push the needle through the canvas again and tell the voice to go milk the cow. The light through the one window has gone the colour of weak tea. You bite the thread off. Your teeth are your scissors half the time. The actual scissors are down to one sharp blade. And you fold the canvas and stand up, and your back announces itself. A deep hot ache low on the right side. The exact shape of the water. Pails you carry from the well, 2 at a time, 5 times a day, 11 pounds each side when full, and the well is 140 steps from the door, because that's where the water witch said to dig, and for once the water witch was right. You check Ingrid first. You always check Ingrid first. She's 3 years old. She's lying on the big bed. There is one bed. You all share it. A straw tick on a frame Niels built from packing crates, and her hair is stuck to her forehead in dark, wet strings. And you put the backs of your fingers against her cheek, and the heat comes off her skin like the side of the stove, and something in your chest drops about an inch. Hotter than this morning. She opens her eyes. They're glassy, too bright. Mama, I'm here. You say it in Norwegian because English is for town and Norwegian is for love. Jegger her. Is it dark? Almost. Sleep now. She closes her eyes, trusting you completely, believing the way children believe, that because Mama is here, nothing bad can happen. You stand there in the dimming sod room, in the smell of earth and smoke and sickness, and you make the oldest bargain women have ever made. The one made in mud huts and palaces and covered wagons since the beginning of the world. Take anything. Take the crop, take the cow, take my hands, my eyes, my life, not her. The wind moans along the roofline, moving the grass that is still growing up there, because your roof is alive. Your roof grows and blooms. In June there were wildflowers on it, actual yellow wildflowers on the roof of your house, and Ingrid laughed and called it the flower house, and it was, for a moment, almost beautiful. Then you take the milk pail down from its nail because the cow doesn't care. The cow never cares. Outside, the evening is enormous. That's the only word for it. Enormous. The sky out here isn't a ceiling, it's a fact. It goes all the way down to the ground on every side, and right now the western half of it is burning orange and rose and a green-gold colour you've never seen anywhere else on Earth. And the eastern half is already purple, and you're a small dark speck walking between them with a tin pail banging against your knee. The cow is named Rosa. She's a dun-coloured shorthand of a creature, ribs a little too visible, staked out on a long rope in the grass east of the house, and she watches you come with the flat, unimpressed eyes of an animal that has correctly assessed her own importance. Rosa is worth $35. Your entire cash reserve in the tobacco tin under the loose floorboard is $11.40. Rosa is, financially speaking, the most valuable member of this family, and she knows it. You set the one-legged milking stool, Niels's design. You strap it to yourself. It looks ridiculous. It works. And you press your forehead against her warm flank, and you take a teat in each hand and begin. Squeeze from the top, roll down. Squeeze, roll. The first jets ring against the empty tin, a high metallic drumming, and then as the pail fills, the sound softens into a low hiss. Milk into milk, and the smell rises up warm and animal and grassy sweet, and your hands do the work without you, because your hands learned this when you were 7 years old on your grandmother's farm above the fjord, and your hands will remember it when everything else is gone. Your hands. While they work, look at them. Really look. Because the woman you were 3 years ago wouldn't recognize them. The knuckles are enlarged. There's a burn scar across the left palm, smooth and shiny, from the day the stove door swung back on its broken hinge. The nails are cut square and short, and 2 of them are black bruised. There are cracks at the corners of your thumbs that open in cold weather and bleed into the bread dough, little pink threads in the white, and you knead them in and say nothing, 'cause flour is 30 cents a sack in town, and town is a full day away, and you do not waste bread over a little blood. Back in Wisconsin, before the wedding, your mother rubbed your hands with mutton tallow every Saturday night so they'd be soft. Ladies' hands, she said. A woman is known by her hands. Your mother was right. A woman is known by her hands. These hands say, this woman hauls 11-pound pails 140 steps, 10 trips a day. These hands say, this woman twists prairie hay into fuel sticks 2 hours every evening because there is no wood. These hands say, this woman butchered a hog in October with her husband and cleaned the intestines for sausage casing in water, so cold her fingers stopped being fingers and became tools she watched from a distance. Rosa shifts her weight and swats you across the face with her tail. It's like being hit with a rope dipped in filth. You spit, say a word your mother never taught you, and keep milking. Squeeze, roll, squeeze, roll. And here, right here, forehead against a cow's ribs, watching the foam rise in the pail while the sky goes down in flames behind you. Here is where I have to stop and tell you what this story's actually about. because the title promised you Wild West women, and maybe you were expecting Calamity Jane. Saloon girls. A woman in fringed buckskin shooting a cigarette out of a man's mouth. Those women existed, a handful of them, and they got famous precisely because they were rare, the way a two-headed calf gets famous. But for every one woman in a Deadwood saloon, there were 10,000 women doing this. Exactly this. Alone on a claim with a pail between their knees. And I'm going to make the case, over the course of this night, that what these women did was harder than anything the famous ones ever did. Harder than gunfights. Because a gunfight lasts 11 seconds, and this, the pail, the well, the wind, the fever in the corner, this lasted 30 years. The West wasn't won by men with revolvers. It was won by women with chapped hands, one bucket at a time, and almost none of their names got written down anywhere except family Bibles and gravestones, and the gravestones out here are wooden, and the wood doesn't last. You strip the last of the milk, you always strip her dry, a cow left half milked dries up, and a dry cow is a dead family. And you stand, and your knees crack like green wood, and you carry the pail back toward the house, holding it out from your body so it doesn't slosh, and the weight pulls that hot ache in your back one notch tighter. 140 steps. You don't count them anymore. Your feet count them for you. At step 90 or so, you see Niels coming. He's a dark shape against the last of the light walking beside the oxen, and even at half a mile you can read his whole day in the way he moves. The scythe is over his shoulder, his head is down, his stride is short. Bad hay then, or a broken cradle, or the creeks dropped further. You've been married 5 years and you can read this man across a half-mile of grass like a page of large print, because when there are only 2 adults in your entire world, you learn the other one the way sailors learn the sea. By the time he reaches the yard, you have the milk strained through cloth into the crocks, and the crocks lowered on strings down the well shaft to keep cool. There is no ice box, the well is your ice box, and the fire built up and the cornmeal mush on. He unyokes the oxen in the blue dark. You hear the chains, the heavy leathery sound of the beast moving off to their picket, his boots on the packed earth of the threshold. He fills the doorway. He smells of cut grass and sweat gone cold and the particular green bitterness of crushed sage. There's a line of dried blood down his left forearm where the grass cut him. Prairie grass will do that. Some of it stands taller than a man and its edges are honed like paper. How is she? First words. Not hello, not the hay. Warmer, you say. You don't say hotter. Same fact, different weight, and he has to leave tomorrow. And if you say hotter, he won't go. And if he doesn't go, the hay contract at the railhead goes to Peterson, and the hay contract is the mortgage payment on the plough, and the plough is next year's wheat, and next year's wheat is whether you're all still alive in 18 months. This is the arithmetic nobody teaches you. Not dollars. Consequences. Every sentence you speak in this house has a price attached, and you've learned to read the prices before you open your mouth. He crosses the room in 3 steps and puts his hand, a hand the size of a stove lid, on his daughter's forehead, so gently the child doesn't stir. He stays bent over her a long moment. The fire pops. The wind works at the stovepipe, a low, mournful flute note it plays on bad nights. I shouldn't go, he says. You should. Ada, 3 days, you say. You'll be back Thursday. It's a summer fever. Children run hot and they cool. You know this. You're saying it to him and to yourself and possibly to God, all 3 at once. And you keep your voice level and you keep your hands moving, stirring the mush, because if your hands stop, he'll see them shake. He straightens up, looks at you across the little room, across the firelight, and there is a whole conversation in the look, the kind married people have without words, and it ends the way it has to end, because the contract is the plough, is the wheat, is your laves. Thursday, he says, before dark, or you eat mush with molasses, the two of you, mostly in silence, dead tired, knee to knee at a table made from the boards of the wagon box, and outside the last light dies, and the stars come out, and the stars out here are not the stars you knew. There are so many of them they look like spilled flour, like smoke, like something broken, and the coyotes start up somewhere to the west, that high unravelling laugh, and Ingrid whimpers in her sleep, and you put your hand on her chest and feel it rise and fall, too fast, and you sit like that for a long time. This is night one. Hold on to that. The story you're inside has a shape, and the shape begins here. A patched wagon cover, a fevered child, a husband leaving at dawn. 3 days. What can happen on a Dakota claim in 3 days? You're going to find out. But not yet. Because to understand what those 3 days will cost, you first have to understand how a girl from a green Wisconsin valley ended up here at all. And what this country does, methodically, deliberately, to the women who come to it. The fire burns down to a red eye. Nils's breathing goes long and slow beside you. You lie on your back with your daughter's hot little body tucked against your side, staring up at a ceiling of earth, listening to the grass grow over your head, and you let yourself remember. You were born in 1858, in a farmhouse in the Koshkonong settlement in southern Wisconsin, the third daughter of Norwegian immigrants, and the first thing you remember is trees. Trees everywhere. Oaks so big 2 men couldn't join hands around them. Maple woods that ran sap in March, shade in August, wood for the stove all winter, walls for the house, rails for the fences. You didn't know, growing up, that trees were a luxury. You thought they were the world. Nobody in a wooded country understands what wood is until they come to a country that has none. Koshkonong was Norwegian from church steeple to hog pen. The service was in Norwegian. The schoolyard fights were in Norwegian. The gossip after church, which was the actual newspaper of the settlement, was in Norwegian, conducted at extremely high speed. Your mother could look at a girl's Sunday shawl across a churchyard and extract from it the entire financial condition of that girl's family, and did every week. You grew up dense with people. That's the word for it. Cousins in every direction. Neighbours close enough to hear their rooster. A world where you were never, not for 1 hour of your life, actually alone. You want to laugh now, remembering that. You didn't know what alone meant. Alone was a room briefly. It had walls of other people on every side. Niels Larsen came to Koshkonong in 1875, hired out for the harvest. A big, quiet 22-year-old off the boat from Hallingdal, with wrists like fence posts, and a way of doing every job slightly better than the man next to him, and saying nothing about it. You watched him pitch bundles onto a wagon for one entire afternoon from the kitchen window, while supposedly churning butter, and your mother watched you watching, and said nothing, because your mother missed nothing, and had already checked into his family, his habits, and his prospects, and had approved all 3 before you'd exchanged 10 words with him. The wedding was in October 1877. You were 19. For 4 years you and Niels worked shares on other men's land and saved, and the money grew with agonizing slowness, and land in Wisconsin cost $15 to $20 an acre and climbing, and the arithmetic said plainly, a man born too late buys nothing here. He works another man's dirt his whole life, like Norway with more pancakes. And then the pamphlet, Dakota. The word itself sounded like a drum. The Northern Pacific and the land offices were papering the whole Midwest with circulars, and they were works of art. Those circulars, I mean that technically. Commissioned illustrations, wheat sheaves fat as feather beds, testimonials from farmers who claimed 60 bushels an acre, maps where the rainfall lines had been redrawn with an optimism that bordered on fraud and frequently crossed the border. There was an actual scientific theory in circulation, real scientists, real lecture halls, called Rain Follows the Plough. The claim was that the act of farming itself changed the climate. Break the sod, plant the trees, and the rains would increase. Settlement would literally water the desert. It was wrong. Catastrophically, murderously wrong. And within a decade, tens of thousands of families would be starved and blown and frozen off those claims when the dry years came. But in 1881, standing in a warm Wisconsin kitchen, it sounded like science, and science sounded like permission. Free land, 160 acres. Niels read the circular twice and set it down and looked at you, and his eyes had that light in them, and you looked back, and here is the truth you've never said aloud to anyone. You could have stopped it. Right there. One word. He would never have dragged you west against a hard no. It wasn't in him. The decision that put you in a dirt house 6 miles from the nearest human face was made jointly, at a kitchen table, by a 23-year-old woman who said, "Well, it's free land. You own that. On the worst days, you make yourself own it. It keeps the bitterness from turning on him, which is the acid that eats homestead marriages alive." You came out in April of 1881. Niels ahead by 6 weeks to file the claim and break the first ground. You following with Ingrid, 1 year old, on your hip, by train to the end of the line, and by hired wagon after. And I want to slow down and give you that wagon ride because it was the doorway, and you knew it even while it was happening. The first day out from the railroad there were farms. The second day there were shanties spaced farther. Sometime in the third day the trees stopped, not thinned, stopped. The world opened like a door onto a green-brown immensity that ran to the edge of sight in every direction. And then, you understood, kept going. And the wagon crawled out into it like a beetle across a table, and the wind met you. The wind that had been travelling unimpeded for 400 miles, warm and huge and smelling of grass and distance. And Ingrid pulled her head down into your shoulder, and the driver, a leathery man who'd made this run 40 times, watched you take it in with an expression you would later learn to recognize on the faces of everyone who'd been here longer than a year. "Big, ain't it?" he said. "Where do people get wood?" you asked. First question, the Wisconsin question. "They don't." You waited for the rest of the sentence. There wasn't any rest of the sentence. That was the whole answer, and it was the truest thing anyone told you about Dakota before or since. They don't. You cook on twisted hay and buffalo chips and sunflower stalks. You build with the ground itself. You burn corn some years, actual corn, food, into the stove. Because corn is 11 cents a bushel and coal is unaffordable, and the arithmetic of survival does not care how it looks. And then, near sundown on the 4th day, a dot on a rise resolved into a man, and the man was Niels, and behind him was a black rectangle in the hillside, with a stovepipe standing out of the grass, and he came running, Niels, who never ran, and swung Ingrid up and held you both. And over his shoulder you looked at the hole in the ground with the stovepipe, and understood that you were looking at your house. And something in you sat down very quietly in a back room of yourself, and closed the door, and did not come out for about a month. The first year. Here is the first year, at speed, the way it actually went, and the way it went for 100,000 women like you across that grass. You learned that a sod house is cool in summer, warm in winter, fireproof, windproof, and alive. Things live in the walls, mice, always. Insects in varieties you never named. Twice, snakes. Once a harmless bull snake that fell from the ceiling onto the supper table, whereupon you learned what your own voice sounds like at full power. Once, in the 2nd June, a rattlesnake coiled in the cool by the water crock at dawn, between you and your sleeping daughter, and you learned something else. That your body will act while your mind is still standing in the doorway screaming. That your hands will take the hoe down slowly, slowly, from the pegs and do the necessary thing in 2 strokes. And that afterward you will shake for an hour, but afterward. Afterward is the key word in that sentence. Out here, fear is a thing you feel afterward, on credit, once the work is done. You learned that when it rains hard, a sod roof holds the water for a day and then lets it through. Not in drips, in slow ceiling-wide seepage, mud tea for 2 or 3 days after the sky is cleared, and that women across the plains fried pancakes holding an umbrella over the skillet, or with a helper standing by holding a dishpan, and this was so universal it wasn't even a story you told, it was just Tuesday. You learned to twist hay. This deserves 30 seconds because it ruled 2 hours of your everyday. A hay-burning stove eats fuel like a threshing crew. Loose hay flashes and is gone. So you take a hank of slough grass as long as your arm, and you twist it against itself hard into a tight figure-8 knot, dense as a stick of wood, and you do this over and over, evening after evening, until your palms are shined smooth and your wrists burn, and you have a mountain of them by the stove, and the mountain lasts a day and a half. Women's hands, meeting hay twists for the first time, are blistered, and the blisters broke and hardened, and by spring a woman could twist hay in the dark while telling a story, and did. You learned the water, 140 steps, the rope, the crank, the sweet, cold, mineral smell coming up the shaft, the full pails and the particular gait you develop, short steps, elbows locked, pails riding just off your thighs, that spills the least. Water for coffee, for mush, for wash, for stock in a dry week, for the garden by the cupful in July when the garden is dying in front of you. There has never been a queen in Europe who understood the value of water like a plainswoman in a dry August, and you learned the silence, which is not silence. It is wind, grass, insects, the tin clatter of the stovepipe, your own pulse, everything except a human voice that isn't yours. Neil's in the fields dawn to dark, Ingrid a baby, sweet company but not conversation. Whole weeks passed in which the adult words you spoke aloud numbered fewer than a Sunday's worth of church. You caught yourself narrating to the cow. Everyone did. This is documented in diary after diary after diary. I talk to the hens, one Dakota woman wrote, and I am beginning to think they answer. She was joking, mostly. The territorial records were not joking. Loneliness was cited in asylum admissions, in suicides, in the quiet returns east of families whose neighbours would only say, "The missus couldn't take the country." It was never phrased as the country breaking her. It was always phrased as her failing the country. Remember that phrasing. It matters later. But you did not break. And here is why. And it isn't courage, and you'd be the first to say so. It's smaller and stranger than courage. It's that the days are so full there is no room to fall apart in. The child, the cow, the stove, the well, the wash, the bread, the garden, the mending, the twists, the child, the cow. The wheel turns and you turn with it. And despair requires leisure, and leisure is the one thing the frontier absolutely will not give a woman. Many years later, an old plainswoman was asked how she survived those years, and she said, "I never found the time to die." You laugh the first time you hear that. Then you stop laughing because it's not a joke. It's an operating manual. You must have slept because the rooster wakes you. Grey light in the one window. The fire is already going. Niels is up, moving in the half-dark, and there's coffee smell cutting through the earth smell. Real coffee, thin because you stretch it with roasted barley, but real, and for one warm half-second the day is ordinary. Then you put your hand on Ingrid. Cooler. You do it again. Both hands, cheek and chest, not trusting the first reading. Cooler. Not cool. There's still fever under the skin. A banked stove warmth. But the furnace heat of last night has come down, and her breathing has stretched out longer, and the relief that goes through you is so physical it's almost pain, a loosening down the whole front of your body, and you sit there on the edge of the bed with your hand on your daughter's chest, and you say thank you to the ceiling in Norwegian, quietly, and mean it more than you have ever meant anything in church. Better, Niels says. Not a question. He's been up an hour. He already checked. He was letting you sleep against the reading. Better. He eats standing. Bread, cold pork, the coffee scalding. He drinks it like his mouth is lined with harness leather. You've never understood it. And outside the oxen are already yoked to the hay wagon, loaded last evening. The patched cover tied down over the mounded loads he'll be freighting between the meadow stacks and the railhead crew for 3 days. The Northern Pacific is pushing track west of the river, and track crews eat horses out of house and home. Contract hay is cash money, and cash money on a proving up claim is rare as rain in August. At the door he stops. This is the moment you've been braced for since yesterday. The goodbye, and you've already decided how you're going to play it. Brisk, wifely. 3 days, Thursday, before dark. Go on now, you're burning daylight. Instead, he takes your face in both hands. Big hands, cracked knuckles, smelling of leather and oxen. He doesn't say be careful, or watch her fever, or any of the things that would put weight on you. He looks at you a moment and says the thing he says maybe twice a year, in the old dialect, the Hallingdal words his mother used. Du er gul, du. You're gold, you are. Then he's out the door and up on the wagon seat, and the oxen lean into the yokes and the whole rig groans into motion, and you stand in the doorway with Ingrid on your hip. She's awake now, limp and quiet but awake, watching Papa go. And you watch the wagon crawl away northeast along the ruts, getting smaller and smaller, the white cover swaying, and the grass takes it the way the sea takes a sail, by inches, until somewhere out at the edge of seeing it, stops being a wagon and becomes a fleck, and then not even that. And now listen. Listen to what's left. Wind, grass, a meadowlark somewhere, that bright falling ribbon of song, the chickens muttering in their sod coop, Rosa tearing grass. You can hear it. Actually hear the grass ripping. That's how much nothing else there is. 6 miles to the Andersons, 200-odd miles to your mother, 3 days to Thursday. You are 24 years old, and everything alive on this claim, the child, the cow, the calf, the 2 hogs, the 11 hens, the garden, the fire, everything is now yours to keep alive alone with these 2 chapped hands. You go back inside and tie on your apron. The wheel turns, turn with it. Here is a day. one day, alone, on the claim. And I'm going to walk you through it close to the skin, because this is the actual answer to the question in the title. Why couldn't you handle Wild West women? Not because they were fast with a pistol. Because of Tuesday. Fire first, always fire. The stove is a black iron box with a firebox barely bigger than a bread loaf, and hay twists burn hot and die fast, so the stove must be fed like an infant, every 10-15 minutes all day, and the feeding is automatic now. A hip swing past the stove, door open, the handle spits heat through the rag you grab it with, twist in, door shut, latch down without breaking stride or thought. You will do this perhaps 60 times before dark. You will not remember a single one. Ingrid gets bread soaked in warm milk with sugar on it, the invalid's breakfast, and eats half, which is half more than yesterday, and you log it in the ledger you keep in your head where a doctor's chart would be if there were a doctor. Then she settled on a quilt on the floor with her treasures, a rag doll named Dakota, 3 brass buttons and a dried gourd that rattles, where you can see her from anywhere in the room and most of the yard. Then the water, because today is wash day, and wash day is the heavyweight bout of the week. Understand what washing clothes means in 1882, in a house with no pump, no drain, no anything. It means water, about 50 gallons of it before you're through, and a gallon weighs a little over 8 pounds, so somewhere north of 400 pounds of water, and every pound of it comes up the well on a rope you crank and travels those 140 steps in pails hanging off your 2 arms. Trip after trip. The rope fibres prickle through your calluses. The crank handle has a flat spot that catches the heel of your hand on every revolution, and you know it's there, and it catches you anyway, every single time. Small tax, paid in full daily. The big copper boiler goes on the stove. The boiler cost $4, and your mother sent it from Wisconsin, and it is, after the window and the sewing machine you don't have, the treasure of the house. And while the first water heats, you shave soap into it. You made the soap. October, hog killing time. The fat rendered in the yard in the black kettle. The lye run from wood ash your mother ships you in flour sacks because there's no wood here to burn for ash. The 2 boil together, hours of stirring, the smell like a chemical accident. The finished soap brown and soft and harsh enough to strip paint. It takes the dirt out of Niels's work shirts. It takes the top layer of your knuckles with it. Nothing out here does only one thing, then the work. Whites first, boiled, hauled, steaming out of the copper on a sawed-off broom handle heavy as drowned animals into the wash tub. And now the board. You brace the ridged washboard in the tub and you take the first shirt and you plunge, wring and scrub. Knuckles riding the wet fabric down the ridges. Lean in with the shoulder, 6 strokes. Flip, 6 strokes. And the water is hot and the soap bites the cracks at your thumb corners with a bright, specific sting you stopped noticing in a general way about 2 years ago, and still notice in a particular way every single time. And the steam comes up in your face smelling of lye and boiled cloth, and your spine settles into the angle, that bent forward wash day angle, and stays there. Shirt, 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 dress, aprons, Ingrid's things, small and quick, then the sheets, which fight you, then Niels's work trousers, which are less laundry than sculpture. Knees stiff with ground in earth, you scrub until your forearms burn and quit while they're still the colour of weak coffee, because they will never again be any other colour, and both of you have made peace with it. Wring everything. This ruins hands faster than the board does. A twisted wet sheet is a rope of iron. You wring in sections, hand over hand, wrists rolling against each other, and the water sheets down your forearms into your armpits and down your sides, and by the end your wrists feel packed with hot sand, and there are women all over this territory tonight, thousands of them, this same day, this same tub, flexing swollen fingers by the fire, and in 30 years their hands will curl with rheumatism into shapes like driftwood, and their granddaughters will hold those hands and ask what happened, and the old women will say, "Wash day." You carry the wet load out to the line. Neil strung real wire between two posts, a luxury. Plenty of women spread wash on the grass itself or on the chicken coop roof, and pegging it up is the one purely pleasant task of the day. Arms up, face to the sun, the wet cloth snapping and filling like sails, and the wind, the same wind that howls you toward madness in January, dries a full line of laundry in 90 Dakota minutes flat. The wind gives, and the wind takes. On the grass, an hour later, the shirts are dry, stiff as shingles, smelling of sun and distance, and there is no smell in the world better, and you'd trade it in one heartbeat for a cramped Wisconsin kitchen with your sister across the table. Both true. Everything out here is both true. Ingrid naps after dinner. She ate a whole egg, the fever's ember lower still, and you allow yourself exactly 1 cup of the barley coffee sitting down in the doorway, facing the emptiness, and the emptiness looks back. Here is the thing about being alone on the grass that no one back east will ever believe. It isn't dramatic. Nothing menaces you. The land isn't hostile. Hostile would be a relationship. The land is indifferent, on a scale your body registers as a kind of pressure, the way you feel a coming storm in your teeth. You sit in the doorway, one small warm-blooded creature at the bottom of a bowl of sky, and the wind moves the grass in long silver-green combers to the horizon, hissing, hissing, and slowly the certainty settles on you that this exact wind moved this exact grass in this exact way for 10,000 years before anyone thought of you, and will for 10,000 after. And the sum total of the difference you and your copper boiler make to it is nothing. Nothing. A wagon fleck, a stovepipe in the grass. Some women found God in that feeling. Some lost their minds in it. And I mean that as history, not poetry. And most, the great uncounted most, did what you do now. Feel the bottom of it open under you for 3 full seconds, cold and endless. And then the fire needs a twist, and Rosa needs moving to fresh grass, and the iron is heating for the pressing, and you get up. Not the time to die, not today either. Now, while the iron heats, it's a sad iron, 6 pounds of solid metal, and yes, that's really the name. Sad from an old word meaning heavy, though nobody who ever pushed one across a shirt on an August afternoon has failed to appreciate the modern reading. While the iron heats and Ingrid sleeps, let me widen the lens. Because you, Ada, are one kind of Wild West woman, and the grass is full of others, and the truth about them has been buried under 60 years of dime novels and a century of movies, and tonight we're digging it up. Start with the number that breaks the saloon girl myth in half. On the settlement frontier of the 1870s and 80s, in the farm country, the overwhelming majority of adult women were exactly what you are, wives and daughters on claims. But here is the part almost nobody knows. Women could homestead alone. The Homestead Act said, any person who's the head of a family or who has arrived at the age of 21 years, person not man, and single women, widows, deserted wives, took the government at its word by the tens of thousands. In parts of the Dakotas, when the land office records were finally counted, somewhere between 5 and 20% of homestead claims were filed by women. And here's the detail that should be famous. The women proved up carried their claims through the full 5 years to final title at a higher rate than the men. Sit with that. In an age when a married woman in many states could not sign a contract, could not keep her own wages, could not vote anywhere except soon in a couple of Western territories. An unmarried woman could walk into a federal land office, put down $14, and become the sovereign owner of 160 acres of the United States if she could survive it. And they survived it. Schoolteachers filing claims and living in tar paper shanties 8 feet by 10, teaching all week and sleeping on their land the requisite nights to hold it. Widows with 4 children ploughing. Sisters filing adjoining claims and building their shanty, straddling the property line so each could legally sleep on her own land in the same bed. That's not a folk tale. That's in the records. Women gamed the greatest land giveaway in history with the lawyer's precision, and the neighbours mostly shrugged, because out here the only character reference that counted was, does her work get done? Does her work get done? Remember that standard too. It cuts both ways, and later tonight it's going to cut you. Then there were the wives who came the other way, the ones who didn't choose it even as much as you half chose it. The literature of the frontier, the real literature, the diaries and letters, is full of a particular scene, repeated so often it's practically a form. The wagon stops. The husband spreads his arms at the empty grass and says, "Here it is," and the wife looks at the horizon, and looks, and the diary entry that night says some version of the same sentence, written in 100 hands across 40 years. I sat down on the wagon tongue and cried, and then I got supper. That sentence is the whole frontier for women, right there. The crying and the supper, in that order, 30 minutes apart, for 30 years. And some could not, and I refused to skip them, because the sleep story version of history where everyone endures nobly is a lie that insults the ones who broke. The plains broke people. Doctors in the region wrote about it. The Norwegian language newspapers your own settlement reads carried the asylum notices in among the crop reports. Women who stopped speaking, women found walking on the open prairie in January without a shawl, going, they said when caught, to a neighbour who lived in Illinois. A woman in one documented case who, after her 4th consecutive crop failure and a winter shut in with the wind, calmly burned down her own claim shanty because, she explained, it was the only way her husband would ever agree to leave. The husband's letters about such women are almost worse than the events. Bewildered, ashamed, using the same passive phrasing every time. She couldn't take the country. Never. The country was more than flesh should be asked to take. The country was never at fault. The country was the promise. Only the woman could fail. You iron the shirts. Press, lean, the hiss of hot metal on damp cloth, the smell of scorched starch and clean cotton, swap the cooled iron for its hot twin on the stove, spit test, press. Your right shoulder has a wash day knot in it the size of a walnut. You work around it. You're 24 and you work around your body the way Niels works around the slough in the North 40. A known feature, mapped, avoided, no longer discussed. And then there's the town women, 11 miles south in Millbrook, which calls itself a town on the strength of a general store, a land office, a smithy, a saloon, a depot the railroaders promised for 2 years and 14 buildings total, 5 of which are unpainted and 2 of which are empty. You go in perhaps once a month, and every trip is a census of the other ways to be a woman out here. Mrs. Volden at the store came out with her husband's stock of goods, and when he died of typhoid the second winter, simply kept the store, keeps the books, extends the credit that keeps half the county alive between harvests, and is, in consequence, quietly the most powerful person for 20 miles, a fact everyone knows and no one says. Watch the big cattle outfit men take their hats off coming through her door. They are not being polite, they're being in debt. The teacher, Miss Cargill, 19 years old from Ohio, paid $25 a month for a 4-month term to keep school for 11 children in a sod schoolhouse, and required by her contract, an actual written contract, not to marry, not to keep company with men, and to board around week by week with the families of her pupils, which means this child woman has slept in more strangers' houses than a drummer and kept her composure in all of them. Teaching was one of exactly 3 respectable ways for a single woman to earn money out here, along with sewing and taking in wash, and it paid the best and cost the most. The teacher is public property, watched like the weather, and one Sunday buggy ride with the wrong young man is a career. And there is the 4th way to be a woman in the West, the way the movies cannot get enough of, and here is the truth of it as the records tell it, and then we will close that door. Yes, there were women in the saloons and the houses behind the saloons, in the cattle towns and the mining camps, and no, it was not fishnet stockings and sass. It was, overwhelmingly, the trade of a last resort for women the system had dropped. Widows without property, deserted wives, girls off failed farms, and it was disease and laudanum and violence, and the ledger of it is written in the town cemeteries where the ages on that side of the fence read 1922, 25, 20. The famous ones, the Calamity Janes, were famous the way lightning strike survivors are famous. The dime novels back east sold those women as the Wild West woman, and the actual women of the West, the Voldens, the Cargills, the Adas hauling 400 pounds of wash water, read those novels by candlelight, snorted, and put another twist in the stove. One more, because she matters most and history kept her name least. The neighbour woman. The institution of the neighbour woman. There is no doctor. Understand that fully. For most plains families, for most emergencies, there is no doctor, and the doctor that exists is a day away, and paid in money that isn't there. So into that space steps the neighbour woman. Whichever wife within a day's ride has the most experience, the steadiest hands, the herbs, the knowledge passed hand to hand from mothers and grandmothers across 2 continents. She sets bones, she poultices wounds, she sits up the death watch, and above all she delivers the babies. Nearly every baby born on this grass is caught by a neighbour woman, and every married woman on the plains lives inside that fact from 2 directions at once. She may be summoned any night to hold the lamp and catch the child, and when her own time comes, her life and the baby's will hang on whether the weather and the distance allow another woman to reach her. Mrs. Anderson, 6 miles northeast, is your neighbour woman. Karen Anderson, 51, from Stavanger by way of Iowa, hands like a stonemason and a voice like a psalm delivered, by her own count kept in the back of her Bible, 61 living children in Iowa and Dakota. She has been to your house 4 times. The 4th time was 14 months ago, and the reason you have not mentioned it yet, the reason you have walked all around it, is that on the 4th visit Karen Anderson sat up with you for 2 days and a night, and at the end of it you and she wrapped a boy, Niels Jr., born too early, breathed 1 hour, in the christening shawl your mother made, and Niels dug the grave up on the rise where the wild roses grow, because it was the only beautiful place, and the wooden marker he made and carved is up there now, and the grass has taken the mound already, the way the grass takes everything. And that, and not the wind, and not the water pails, is the true weight you carry 140 steps at a time, and we will not speak of it again tonight except to say you are not unusual. Walk any stretch of this frontier and count the little markers on the rises. The women of the West buried children at rate the modern mind flinches from, and got supper and the diaries record both, usually in the same entry, usually in the same steady hand. And if you want to know what Wild West women were actually made of, don't look at the gunfight photographs. Read those entries. Read the steadiness of the handwriting. The iron has gone cold. The shirts are folded. The light is slanting long and gold across the floor, and Ingrid is awake and singing something tuneless to Duca, and her forehead under your lips is barely warm. Barely. Blessedly barely. One day down. Niels is a day northeast, sleeping under the wagon. 2 more days. You feed the stove and the hens and the hogs and the child and yourself in that order, and the sun goes down in a sky the colour of the inside of a shell, and the coyotes tune up, and you bar the door. 1 bar, oak from Wisconsin, Nils's one superstition. And you sleep the sleep of the hard-worked, which is dreamless and sudden, like falling down a well. Tomorrow is the day you go to town. Tomorrow is also the day the weather turns, but you don't know that yet. The trip to town wasn't in the plan. The plan was 3 quiet days, the child mending, the wagon back Thursday. But you're out of 2 things, and the 2 things are quinine and kerosene, and the quinine is the whole argument. The fever's down, but the fever was down once before 10 days ago, and then it came back, and there is exactly one medicine anyone on this frontier trusts against a recurring fever, and it is quinine, sold at Volden's in paper packets, bitter as sin, dosed to children in molasses, and the tin on your shelf is empty. If the fever climbs again tonight with Niels gone and the tin empty, you will spend the night watching your daughter burn with the one useful thing 11 miles away, and you know yourself now after 3 years of this country. It isn't the disasters that break you. It's standing in them empty-handed. So, 11 miles south, 11 back. With the oxen gone, that means the pony. Bram, a shaggy buckskin gelding of profound cynicism, bought for $8 because he was too small for the freight teams, hitched to the 2-wheeled cart. 4 hours down at Bram's philosophical pace. An hour in town, 4 back. Leave by 6, home by 4, chores by dark. It works if nothing goes wrong, and you make the decision the way every decision gets made out here, alone at a table by lamplight, weighing wrongs that could happen against wrongs that could happen, no one to ask, and morning finds you greasing the cart axle with the last of the tallow while the east goes pink. You dress Ingrid warm despite the promise of heat. A fevered child chills fast in a moving cart, and you dress yourself in the town dress, the brown calico with the fewest patches, and your bonnet, the great sun bonnet with the stiffened brim like a tunnel, which back east has become a joke, the badge of the hayseed's wife, and out here is the only thing standing between a woman's face and a sun that ages skin like slow fire. Vanity survives on the frontier. It just changes tactics. The morning is glorious and wrong. You feel the wrongness before you can name it, standing in the yard while Bram sulks into his collar. Glorious. The air rinsed and cool, the grass beaded silver, meadowlarks going off like small bright alarms in every direction. Wrong. The wind. There isn't any. 11 days of wind, and now nothing. The grass stands still. The stillness has a held breath quality, a pressure, and the sky in the northwest. You look, the way you've learned to look, first thing and last thing and hourly in between. The sky in the northwest is clear, but it's the wrong clear. a hard white blue like the glaze on a crock. Niels has a word for stillness like this. He calls it the det. The plains never give you a calm day, he says. They lend it. But quinine is quinine. You lift Ingrid into the cart, wedge her in the corner on the horse blanket with Duca, and climb up, and Bram leans into it, and the cart wheels turn onto the ruts south, creaking their one creak per revolution, a sound so much a part of travel now you'd only hear its absence. 11 miles of grass. Let me give it to you honestly rather than romantically. It is 2 hours of almost nothing, and 1 hour of accumulating small things. A slough where the ruts bend and blackbirds with red wing patches rasp at you from the reeds. A stretch where last year's fire came through and the new grass grows greener over the old black. The Halverson place, abandoned. They proved up, sold out, gone to Oregon. The shanty already sagging, the door off, and you don't look long. Nobody looks long at an abandoned claim. It's like meeting the eyes of a drunk in church. Ingrid sleeps against your side, wakes, eats a biscuit, points at a hawk. The sun climbs and grows teeth. The stillness holds, and by mid-morning it's genuinely hot, hotter than the hour should allow, and the northwest horizon has developed the faintest smudged line at its base, like a thumbprint on the crock glaze, and you check it every few minutes now, and it doesn't grow, and it doesn't go away. Millbrook announces itself the way all prairie towns do, as a rumour of verticality. First the grain elevator frame, skeletal, half-built, then the store's false front, then the whole huddle of it, 14 buildings pretending together, with all their might, to be a place. You've seen Chicago once from a train window. You know what this isn't. But after 8 months of a horizon with nothing man-made on it, but your own stovepipe, Millbrook, Dakota territory, population maybe 60, hits your senses like a metropolis. Voices, multiple simultaneous human voices, a hammer somewhere, ringing double, strike an echo. 2 wagons and a buggy at the store rail. The smithy's smell of coal smoke and scorched hoof. It's loud. It's crowded. It is neither of those things anywhere else on earth. But your ears have been recalibrated by the grass, and you sit up straighter on the cart seat without meaning to. And so does Ingrid, her fever-dull eyes coming alive, and she says with the awe of a pilgrim sighting Rome, "Mama, houses." Volden's general merchandise is dim and cool and dense with smells layered like the strata in a cut bank. Coffee, vinegar, new denim, harness leather, coal oil, the cheese under its screen dome. Peppermint from the candy jars, and under everything the dry goods smell. Calico and paper and starch. You stand 1 second inside the door, just breathing it. Every farm woman does. Mrs. Volden lets them. Mrs. Volden herself is at the counter in black. She has worn black for 6 years. It has long since stopped being mourning and become uniform the way a judge wears robes. Weighing nails for a man you don't know while conducting simultaneously 3 other transactions of information with 2 women at the fabric table. This is the other thing the store is, the exchange, the newspaper, the parliament. In the 15 minutes you're there you learn that the railroad has, again, promised the depot by spring, that the Kettlesons on Cherry Creek have a new boy, 12 pounds, mother doing well, Karen Anderson attending, that wheat is holding at 81 cents in Yankton, that a family named Roos, 2 townships east, has given up and gone back to Minnesota, and the store hums a little around that news. The particular hum of people making sure their own certainty is still fastened on tight, and that the weather, the man buying nails says it, jerking his chin at the door at the white-blue glare beyond. The weather is fixing to do something. Been too still too long, he says, and the flies were biting the teams double this morning. Mrs. Volden, weighing nails, not looking up. Birds went quiet an hour ago. Nobody says anything more. On the plains, that is a complete conversation, and everybody in the store has begun, invisibly, recalculating their afternoons. You buy fast. Quinine, 2 packets. Mrs. Volden takes one look at your face when you ask and adds a third. For the shelf. And marks the book, which is her way. Credit extended in the grammar of housekeeping, so it never has to be named charity. Kerosene, 1 can. Coffee. A nickel's worth of striped candy pressed into Ingrid's fist, not by you, but by Mrs. Volden, over the counter, for the patient. And Ingrid goes wide-eyed and silent as a struck bell, and holds the sack with both hands the whole way home like it is the communion silver. At the door, Mrs. Volden says the only sentence she'll say to you all day that isn't commerce. Your man's on the railhead run. Back Thursday. She looks past you, northwest, where the smudge on the horizon has in the last hour stopped being a smudge. It is a low bank now, a dark seam between grass and sky, and it has the sheen on it, the greasy gunmetal sheen, and every farmer in the territory knows that sheen, and Mrs. Volden looks at it, and looks at your little cart, and your little pony, and your little girl, and does the arithmetic of 11 miles, and you watch her decide not to say don't go, because your stock is home alone and your fire is banked and she knows it, and instead she says, drive straight along then. That's the frontier for I love you, be safe. God keep you. Drive straight along then. You climb up, you drive straight along. For the first hour, Bram earns his $8 for the first time in his cynical life, moving out at a shuffling jog he has never previously acknowledged possessing, ears swiveled back to the northwest like weather vanes, because horses do the arithmetic too, faster than we do. The bank of cloud stands up slowly out of the horizon as you go, not drifting, building, a dark wall going up in tiers, its top spreading flat like something pressed against glass, and the sun still blazes on you from a clear sky overhead, which is the eeriest part, the heat on your neck and the darkness ahead, and the stillness now absolute, pressurized, ringing. The grass has stopped moving entirely. The blackbirds at the slough have vanished. Ingrid, candy sack clutched tight, has gone quiet against your side, watching the wall the way children watch things without theory. Then, at maybe 6 miles out, you know the spot, the burned stretch, green over black. 3 things happen in the space of a minute. The temperature drops, not eases, drops. A cold breath out of the northwest across your sweating face. 10 degrees in a swallow. The smell of it wet and mineral. River bottom smell. Rain on dust somewhere far off. The wall flickers. Deep inside itself, orange-white, a vast silent pulse. And then seconds later the sound arrives. Not a crack, but a long, low roll that goes on longer than thunder should, that you feel in the cartboards under your thighs. And the wall grows a beard. Below the black base, a grey veil unrolls toward the ground, and the veil has a strange pale luminous quality, almost white. And you have been on this land 3 years, and you know rain grey from that white, and your whole body goes cold before your mind finishes the word. Hail. 5 miles from home. A pony, a cart, a sick child, and the biggest hailstorm you have ever seen walking toward you across the grass at the speed of a running horse with nothing. You turn your head once all the way around, and the land offers you its answer, its one eternal answer, grass and grass and grass, with nothing to get under between here and your own door. Row, Bram, you say, and you take the whip out of its socket for the first time since you've owned him. Bram, now. Bram runs. He runs the way small, tough horses run when the animal in them overrules the cynic, low and flat and scrambling, and the cart bangs and yaws over the ruts behind him, one wheel and then the other slamming through the dried holes of last month's mud, and you stand half crouched against the seat, with the lines in your left hand and your right arm clamping Ingrid against your hip. And she isn't crying, which is worse than crying. She has gone rigid and silent with her face pressed into your side, and the candy sack is still in her fist, and some absurd calm corner of your mind notes that she will not let go of it, not once, through everything that is about to happen. The storm swallows the sun. It happens between one breath and the next. The light doesn't fade, it's removed, and the world goes a bruised green-grey, the grass gone dark and strange, and the cold pours over you now in earnest. A wind out of the wall's base that flattens the grass in long silver shudders. First wind in an hour, and it comes as an assault, snapping your bonnet back off your head to hang strangling at your throat, and the roll of thunder is continuous now, and under it, growing, there is another sound. You will hear this sound for the rest of your life, sometimes in dreams. Every plain settler learns it once and never again needs it explained. It is the sound of hail on prairie, coming, a hissing roar, like a train, like a waterfall, like the sky frying, thousands upon thousands of ice stones hitting grass and ground, in a wall advancing at 40 miles an hour, and you can see it now, behind you and to the right, the white curtain, the ground beneath it boiling, and you do the last arithmetic of the day with a mind gone very cold and very clear. Home is 3 miles. The storm is 1. You will not make it home. And here, this exact moment, standing in a bucking cart in the green dark with the sky roaring, this is the moment the whole night has been driving toward, so let me freeze it and say the thing plainly. The dime novels are wrong about courage. Courage on the frontier almost never looked like facing something down. It looked like this. A 24-year-old woman with no options doing the next necessary thing anyway, at speed, without the luxury of fear, because fear is for afterward. Watch what she does. Watch what your hands, which are her hands, do. The burn stretch, the fire ground. You passed it a mile back and your mind photographed, without being asked, the thing your eyes slid over. The cut bank. Where the ruts crossed the dry slough, the spring floods have carved the bank on the north side. An overhang of root-bound sod, maybe 3 feet of undercut, black and low. A ditch, a hole in the ground. Out here, in the end, the ground is the only shelter there has ever been. The settlers know it. Half of them live in it. When the planes come to kill you, you go down. You haul Bram's head around so hard he nearly sits, and you leave the ruts, and you send him straight across the open grass toward the slough, with the cart leaping whole feet of air behind him, and the first stones start to fall. They come ahead of the wall outriders, and they do not patter. They arrive. A stone the size of a walnut explodes off the cart rail, 6 inches from your hand, fragments stinging your wrist. Another strikes Bram on the haunch, and he screams. You have never heard a horse make that sound, and bolts the last 100 yards so fast you nearly lose the seat, and the slough is there, the cut bank is there, and you are pulling him up and down off the cart with a child in your arms while the world turns white. There is no time to unhitch. That thought will live with you. There is time for one action, and you spend it correctly. You wrench the horse blanket off the cart seat, and you go down the crumbling edge into the dry slough bed, half sliding on your hip with Ingrid crushed to your chest, and you fold the two of you into the black space under the overhang, back against cold root-woven earth, knees up, the blanket dragged over both of you, her face pressed under your chin, your arms over her head, your own head bent, the bonnet's ruined brim over your neck, and the hail arrives. I could try to describe it acoustically and fail, so instead, it is a sound you feel with your whole back. The overhang above you shudders. The roar is total, a white ceiling of noise in which single impacts are still somehow distinct. The whack of stones into the sod overhead, the pock 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 into the slough bed a yard from your feet, where the ice is already bouncing and rolling. Stones the size of eggs, one the size of your fist that hits the opposite bank and buries itself, and the cold rolling off the fallen ice in waves, your breath fogging in July and through everything. Up on the bank, Bram screaming and the cart slamming, and you cannot help him. You cannot. You hold what you can hold, and under the blanket, under your chin, small and hot and shaking, Ingrid finally cries, a thin, steady thread of sound almost lost in the roar. And you do the only thing there is. You sing. You didn't decide to. Your mother's voice simply comes up your throat and out. The old evening hymn, Norwegian, the one sung over cradles in Hallingdal for 200 years, and your voice shakes and the sky is trying to hammer the world flat, and you sing about God's care through the night, into a child's hair, in a hole in the ground in Dakota, and this too, write it down, remember it, this too is what Wild West women were, every lullaby ever sung inside a disaster. There were women that same decade who sang through cyclones in dug cellars, through blizzards under buffalo robes, through Cheyenne country nights in wagon corrals, and the children they sang to grew old and wrote their memoirs, and it is astonishing if you read those memoirs how many of them remember not the storm but the singing. Hail like that cannot last. It is violence on credit and the account empties fast. 9 minutes, you'll estimate later it felt like a season, and the roar slackens, steps down to rain, hard, straight, cold rain, and then the rain too thins, and the light comes back weird and yellow-white under the storm's trailing edge, and you lift the blanket off and look out at the world. The world is white, the slough bed, the banks, the grass in every direction, paved with ice, inches of it, fog smoking up off it into the warm air, a July snowfield stinking of ozone and crushed green. Because that's the other thing, the smell. The entire prairie has been mowed and mashed at once, tons of grass pulped, and the air is thick with the sweet wounded smell of it. Hailstones lie against your shoe. You pick one up between two fingers numbly, the way you'd pick up a strange coin. It is bigger than a hen's egg and it has rings inside layered like an onion, ice and milk ice round and round. It was manufactured 5 miles above your head, this thing, assembled in the black and thrown at you. Ingrid, hiccuping, cheeks striped with tears and mud, holds up the candy sack to soaked, intact, for your inspection. Didn't drop it, she says, and you laugh. Wildly, briefly, with rain in your eyes, at the bottom of a ditch, and hug her hard enough that she protests, and then you climb the bank to count the damage, because that is the order of operations on the frontier, and the order never changes. Live through it, laugh once if you can, then count. Bram is alive. That's the miracle of the day, and you take it. He stands trembling in the traces, cut along the haunch and welted across the back in a dozen rising ridges, blood running thin and pink in the rain wet, and the cart is beaten. 3 spokes cracked, 1 rail split white, the seat board broken clean, but it rolls. The kerosene can is dented and holding. The quinine wrapped in oilcloth inside your basket under the seat is dry. Small mercies, itemised. Out here you learn to itemise mercies with the same rigour you count losses, because the ledger has to balance somewhere or you can't go on. Now the losses. You stand up on the wrecked cart seat and look northeast toward home, 3 miles, and the white swath runs that way. You can see the storm's whole track laid across the land like the print of a rolling pin, a band maybe 2 miles wide, blazing white, running from the northwestern horizon past you and onto the southeast, and your claim, your quarter section, your world, sits in the middle of that band, and you know, standing there in the steaming afternoon before you can see any of it, you already know, the garden, 4 months of hauled cupfuls of water, gone to green pulp between 2 breaths of sky, the hens, if they didn't get to the coop, and the wheat. Niels's 40 acres of first real wheat, headed out, 3 weeks from cutting, the wheat that was the proof up, the wheat that was the loan payment, the wheat that all of it, the boat, the wagon, the hole in the hillside, the little marker on the rise where the roses grow, the wheat that all of it was for. You drive home through the white and don't let yourself think in words. The runoff hisses in every low place. Steam stands over the whole prairie like the land is a horse run too hard. And the claim comes up over the last swell, and the house is fine. Of course the house is fine. You cannot kill a hole in the ground. There is a bitter joke buried in that, and some day you will be old enough to laugh at it. The house is fine. Sod roof pocked and shining, and the coop held, hens shrieking their outrage but alive, and Rosa stands at the full length of her picket rope, welted, indignant, uddered, alive, and the wheat field is gone, not damaged, gone. 40 acres of standing grain hammered flat into the mud, threshed by the sky and ploughed under in 9 minutes, stalks driven down all one direction like combed hair, the heads shattered, the kernels. You walk into the field, you can't not, the ice crunching under your shoes. The kernels are lying in the mud between the ruined rows, thousands of them, millions of them, milk soft and split, and you stand in the middle of it in the steam and the ozone stink with your daughter on your hip, and this is the moment. Every settler woman's diary has this moment, the moment the year dies. And here is what you do, and I am not going to dress it up, because what you do is the whole answer to the whole question, and it needs no dressing. You stand there for the length of 10 breaths. You let it hit you. The cold goes through your chest like well water. Then you say, out loud, to 40 dead acres, in English for some reason, in a voice you barely recognise as yours, well, and you turn around and you carry your daughter into the house, and you light the fire, the stove first, always the fire first, and you hang the wet blanket, and you strip the wet dress off the child, and dose her a half packet of quinine in molasses and put her in a dry shift, and you go back out into the steaming white evening and milk the trembling cow with your own hands, shaking so hard the first jets miss the pail, and you rub tallow into Bram's welts while he leans his beaten head against your chest, and you gather 9 eggs, and you stand the broken cart under the lean-to, and you get supper. You cried on the wagon tongue. Then you got supper. Somewhere in the middle of it, the sun comes out below the clouds and the whole ruined, ice-covered world lights up gold and glittering, unbearably beautiful, because the plains have never once apologized and are not starting tonight. That night is the longest of your married life that you spend alone. Ingrid sleeps early and deep. Fear is exhausting, and the fever, by some mercy or by the quinine or both, stays down. Her forehead cool under your hand at dusk, cool at full dark, cool at the hour you finally stop checking. The house holds its earth-smelling warmth. The fire ticks. Outside, the melting hail runs and drips and whispers off the roof edge. All night, a sound like the world quietly wringing itself out. And you sit at the table with a lamp turned low to save the new kerosene. And you do the thing you've been putting off since you stood in the dead field. You think. The wheat was going to bring, Nils's careful figuring, done twice on the flyleaf of the almanac, something near $400. Against it stood the note on the breaking plough, and the cedar, $91 due in November to the implement dealer in Yankton at 12%, which is what credit costs a man with dirt for collateral. Stood the winter's coal, or the corn to burn instead. Stood shoes, cloth, salt, the seed for next spring. The hay contract Niels is freighting right now is $40, and it is suddenly not a nice extra. It is the whole crop. $40 and $11.40 in the tobacco tin, and a cow and a beaten pony and 9 hens, against a Dakota winter. There is a word that lives at the bottom of this arithmetic, and you make yourself look straight at it. Back, as in going back. The Ruses went back. The Halversons sold and went. Half the county, if the dry talk at Volden's is honest, is one bad year from back, and you've just had your bad year delivered in 9 minutes, and back is real. Your mother's kitchen is real. The Green Valley is real. Land can be rented in Wisconsin. Nils's arms are worth $1 a day anywhere on earth. Nobody dies of going back. Something dies of going back. You sit with the lamp and take that apart honestly because it deserves honesty. What dies? Pride? Yes. But pride is cheap. You'd pay pride by the sackful for your child's safety and never miss it. No. Sit longer. Look closer. What dies is this. The version of you that is on the other side of the prove-in. 2 more years. 2 more years and the patent comes from Washington with a seal on it. And the 160 acres belongs to Niels and Ada Larson and their line forever. The first ground anyone in either of your bloodlines has owned outright in. You've done this count before. On other nights. In at least 300 years. Cotters and tenants and hired folk back and back and back up the Hallingdal. Back up your own valley. 3 centuries of people who worked land at another man's pleasure. And the line runs down all those generations to a woman sitting in a house made of the actual land itself. $11.40 from ruin. 2 years from being the one who ended it. That's the ledger. That's what the storm is really asking, and the storm is asking you first, alone, tonight, because Niels won't be home till tomorrow, and whatever face you wear when his wagon comes over the rise is the face the decision will wear. You know this about your marriage. The way you know the well is 140 steps. He is the stronger back. You are the keel. If you say the word back softly, even once, this claim is over by October. He would do it for you without a reproach and grieve it quietly for 40 years. And if you don't say it, this family stays, and whatever the staying cost lands on nobody harder than you. Outside, the dripping slows toward midnight. A coyote goes off to the west, and another answers closer, and the hens mutter once and settle. You get up finally, stiff-hipped, and before bed you do a strange thing. A thing you couldn't explain to anyone and don't try to explain to yourself. You take the lamp and step out into the night. The cold has gone soft. The last ice lies in the hollows like spilled milk under a sky rinsed absolutely clean, and the stars are savage, the whole Milky Way laid across the black like a snowdrift, and you walk, lamp in hand, shawl over your shift. You walk up the rise where the wild roses grow to the little wooden marker, and you stand there a while in the enormous starlit quiet. You don't say anything. It isn't that kind of visit. You stand with your son a few minutes in the night, in the middle of the land that is 2 years from carrying his name on its deed forever, and somewhere in the standing the question finishes answering itself, the way the big questions always do, not in words, not in a flash, just a settling, like a house finding its footing on new ground. He's here, you're staying. You bank the fire and bar the door and sleep like the dead until the rooster. Thursday. You spend it at the mending of 100 small wounds, the coop roof, the garden fence, the cart spokes wrapped in wet rawhide that will shrink iron tight by Sunday. And you keep one eye northeast the whole day, and it's past 6, the light long and red, when the fleck appears on the ruts and slowly becomes a wagon, becomes oxen, becomes a man walking beside them who has already seen. You watch it hit him, a half-mile out, watch his head turn to the white-scoured band lying across the land, watch him stop dead for 3 full seconds, watch him look toward the house, and the field, and the house again. And then he comes on faster. You walk out to meet him with Ingrid running ahead, shrieking "Papa," and he catches her up on one arm without breaking stride and reaches you and stops. And up close his face is grey under the road dust and his eyes go over you. Your scabbed wrist, the welt on your cheekbone you didn't know showed. And then over your shoulder at the flattened field and back to you. And his mouth works once, and what comes out hoarse is, "The storm crossed the trail south of the railhead. Fella said the band ran." He can't build the sentence. Starts again. "I drove all day telling myself it missed the claim." It didn't miss, you say. We're all right. Everything that breathes is all right. The wheat's gone. The wheat, he says. All of it. He sets Ingrid down slowly. He walks a few steps past you and stands looking at the field in the red light. 40 acres combed flat, already drying, already smelling of hay instead of harvest. And you watch your husband's back, and you see what the country never lets women say out loud about the men either. It grinds them too, differently, along a different seam. The man's seam is this one, the provider seam. A woman on the frontier is allowed to weep at the washtub, at least in the diaries. A man is permitted roughly nothing, and you watch Niels Larsen stand at the edge of his dead first crop with his hat in his hand like it's a funeral, because it is, and his shoulders in the red light are the shoulders of a man doing arithmetic he cannot make come out. And when he finally turns around, his eyes are wet and his jaw is set, and the first whole sentence he manages is, "Ada, I'm sorry. I'm so—" Stop. You say it gently, but you say it like the bar going into its brackets. Did you hail on the field? Did you? Then you've nothing to be sorry for, and I won't hear it. Sit down. There's supper. And at the table over fried mush and eggs, and the ruinously extravagant celebration coffee you made at full strength on purpose, you lay it out for him, the tin, the note, the hay money, the winter, and you watch him. Understand, slowly, somewhere in the middle of it, that you've already been through this country ahead of him, alone, 2 nights running, that the ground he's standing on has been surveyed, and you get to the end and he sits looking at you a long moment in the lamplight. "You've thought about Wisconsin," he says, not accusing, reading you the way you read him across the half-mile. "I have. And I went and stood on the rise," you say, "and then I came back down and mended the coop." Silence. The fire ticks. Ingrid on the floor is feeding molasses to Duca. Niels looks down at his hands on the table, the stove-lid hands cracked and road-grimed. And something moves through him that you'll spend years failing to find the words for. The closest you'll ever come is that you watch the weight change shape on him, not lighten, change shape, redistribute the way a load does when a second shoulder comes under it and takes up half of 40 acres of dead wheat, and the man breathes out one long breath and reaches over and covers your wrecked right hand with his carefully around the scabs and says, in the old dialect thick, "Dua ghoul do." "I know," you say in English, and he barks one broken-off laugh, the first of the evening, and that, a bad joke over cold mush, 4 days after the sky destroyed your year. That is what deciding to stay looked like, on the real frontier, at one table among 10,000 tables where the same decision was being made that same summer, some deciding stay and some deciding back, and neither answer wrong, neither answer easy, and the census takers came through decade after decade and counted the ones who stayed, and the ones who stayed became the states, and the deciding itself, the lamplit, coffee-black, ruined-handed deciding, got written down almost nowhere because the people doing it did not consider it history. It was just Thursday. That night in bed, with the whole family breathing in one dark, earth-walled room, Niels says into the ceiling, "Hey." The whole prairie's mowed. The storm banned. It's 40 square miles of cut grass lying out there free for the raking, and the railhead crews buying every ton at $7. If the weather holds 10 days, and we work like the devil, we, you say, you, me, and the pony rake, he says. Ada, there's most of a wheat crop lying dead out there, if we're strong enough to pick it up. The plains never give. They lend. And once in a great while, having beaten you flat, they leave something in the wreckage. Never a gift, only a wage, offered at the last hour, payable in the sweat of everyone in the house over the age of 3. Then we pick it up, you say, and roll over and sleep. The 10 days that follow are the hardest sustained labour of your life, and you have hauled water through 2 Dakota winters, so weigh that sentence properly. Understand the race you're running. Grass beaten flat by hail is hay only briefly. Wet, it moulds. Sun cured on the ground, it's money. But every dew re-wets it, and every hot day steals its green, and the railhead pays $7 a ton for bright hay, and 4 for brown, and nothing for black. So the storm's strange wage is melting, even as you reach for it. 10 days, maybe 12. 2 adults, a pony, a one-horse rake, 2 pitchforks, and a wagon. Here is what a haying day is, for a woman, in August of 1882, and I want you to live one whole one, because the movies gave every one of these days to the men. 3:30 in the morning, black dark. You're up first, the fire, always the fire, and by 4 you've got coffee boiled, mush cooked, the day's bread sponge set, cold pork sliced, and a dinner packed in the wash boiler because dinner will be eaten in the field, and Niels is out harnessing by starlight, and Ingrid, recovered now, the fever gone the way summer fevers go, leaving her thinner and taller seeming. Ingrid rides to the field on the wagon in her nightgown, wrapped in the horse blanket, still asleep, because there is nowhere else for her to be. This is the part the paintings leave out. There is no one to watch the children. The children come to the work. All over this territory this morning, children are asleep in hay wagon beds, in furrow-end shade tents made of a propped quilt. Tied? Yes, tied. A soft rope around the middle, the other end to the wagon wheel. And if that shocks you, invent a better answer for a 2-year-old. 100 acres of standing slough water, and a mother who's a quarter mile down the windrow with a fork in her hands. Dawn comes up over the flattened band, and the whole world smells of curing grass, sweet and dusty green, a smell so dense it's nearly food. Niels runs the rake, Bram walking the storm band, the long-sprung teeth combing the beaten grass into windrows, endless dark lines across the white-blonde stubble. And your job, hour on hour, is the fork. Cocking, walking the windrow, forking the hay up into cocks, the small tight stacks that shed dew until wagon time. Fork in, the resistance of matted hay against the tines, that specific dense wet mattress resistance. Lift, and the load comes up your arms into your shoulders. 12 pounds, 15. Pivot from the hips, place, tamp, step, fork in. Again, again. Perhaps 400 times before the 9 o'clock rest. The fork handle is hickory, smooth as bone from Niels's hands, and now yours, and by the 3rd day it has raised a new blister bed inside your right thumb, even through 3 years as callus. And the blisters break by noon and dry stiff by night, and you grease them with tallow and wrap them in flannel strips, and by the 6th day they have annealed into something the fork can't argue with anymore. Hands adjust. That is their whole biography out here. Hands adjust. The heat comes on by 10 like a hand pressing down. You work in the full dress. No plainswoman strips to her shift in an open field. Propriety survives even here. Propriety would survive the end of the world. The sweat runs down your spine and stings the hail scab on your wrist, and the chaff. The chaff is the true torment of haying, and no one ever warns you. Broken grass dust and seed heads sifting into everything, down your collar, into your sleeves, gluing to sweat, needling every crease of you, and there is no washing until night, so you carry the itch like the ache, filed, worked around. At noon you all eat in the wagon's shade. Cold pork, bread, molasses, the water jug wrapped in wet sacking, and the water is blood warm and taste of tin, and is the finest thing you've ever drunk. And Niels lies flat in the stubble with his hat over his face for exactly a quarter hour, dead to the world, and Ingrid puts chaff on him solemnly, decorating him like a cake, and you let her. Afternoons, loading. Niels pitches from the cocks up onto the wagon, and you build the load, which is skilled work and hard work at once. You stand on the rising hay itself, catching each forkful, placing it, binding the edges by the lay of the stem so the load knits together and won't shed on the haul, and the wagon sways under you, and the hay works up your skirts, and the sun hammers the top of your bonnet, and load by load the rack goes to the railhead trailhead where the stacks rise. Niels tops them. Stacking is the one art he won't delegate. A leaking stack is a rotted stack. And by the time the light goes long, you have moved. The two of you. Some 6 or 8 tons of grass with your arms. And then, hold your groan, then the chores, the day's 2nd day. The cow, the hogs, the hens, the milk to strain, supper to make, Ingrid to wash and hear her prayers, the sponge to knead down, tomorrow's dinner to eye, the blisters to grease, and it is fully 10 o'clock when you lie down and 3:30 when you rise, and you do this 10 days running. And on the 7th day, which is Sunday, you rest. You actually rest. Both of you, hollow-eyed and hymn-singing at the table because church is 11 miles and 2 hours you cannot spend. You rest because Niels's grandfather's God and your mother's God are the same God, and he was plain about the seventh day, and also, though neither of you says it, because bodies at this pitch of use break without a Sabbath, and every farm family on the plains knows both reasons and keeps the day for both. Karen Anderson drives over that Sunday afternoon with a crock of butter and her youngest son, and sits with you in the doorway shade and looks at your hands, and takes them in her stonemason zone and turns them over, palms up, and studies the fork blisters and the hail scab and the lie cracks with the eye of a woman reading a well-kept ledger, and says, in Norwegian, the single finest compliment you will receive in your entire life, the one you will still be quoting to your granddaughters in another country of automobile and electric light. Ja, says Karen Anderson, these are getting to be Dakota hands. The hay saves you. Say it plainly, the way the almanac flyleaf says it in Neil's careful figures. 31 tons delivered bright, $7 the ton, $217 against a dead wheat crop that was going to bring 400. It is not victory. The note gets paid, and the coal gets bought, and the seed is secured, and the margin for everything else is thin as skim milk, and the winter ahead will be pinched and careful, and you will burn hay twists in January until your palms shine, and eat more cornmeal than any of you can later stand the smell of. But the claim holds. The year, killed in 9 minutes in July, is dragged back breathing by 2 people and a pony in 10 days of August. And this too was the actual West. Not the gunfight, but the comeback, performed 10,000 times a season, unphotographed, across the whole grass ocean. Autumn comes down the land in golden smoke. You dig the potatoes the storm spared. Root crops laugh at hail, there's a sermon in that somewhere, and bank the house walls with fresh sod against the cold, and Niels hauls winter coal to eke the twists, and one bright October day a stranger's wagon stops on the ruts, and it is the Ruse's cousin, going east, out, done, and he offers Niels their abandoned shanty for the lumber, cheap, and Niels buys it, and tears it down board by board, and all that dark autumn you hear him in the lean-to, sawing, planing, saying nothing, and at Christmas Eve candle-lit, the good tablecloth from Wisconsin on the wagon board table, he carries in the thing he's been building, and it is a real wooden floor cut and fitted for the sod house, pale plank smelling of pine, and he lays the first section down over the packed earth by the stove, and sets Ingrid on it in her stocking feet, and she walks back and forth on it, staring down like it's ice, like it's glass, like it's the deck of a ship, and you stand there with your hand over your mouth, and Neil says, gruff, not looking at you, a woman shouldn't stand on dirt all her days, and that is the other thing the dime novels never found room for. That out here, where nothing could be bought, love learned carpentry. Winter. The third winter, and by now you know its whole vocabulary. The mornings the water crock wears a skin of ice inside the house. The 2-day ground blizzard in January, the world erased to a white roar. The rope Niels rigs from door to barn because men have frozen to death 30 feet from their own stoves, lost between house and stock, and you hold the rope going to milk with the wind screaming and the snow moving horizontally like a river running through the air, and Rosa's flank is a stove of animal heat in the white chaos, and you press your forehead to it and milk by feel with your eyes shut. The long February evenings, the three of you inside the lamp's small yellow country. Neil's mending harness, you knitting from unravelled worn things, Ingrid learning her letters off the almanac, the wind working the stovepipe, the grass roots in the walls ticking as they freeze, and whole weeks passing without another face. But it is different now, the aloneness, and you notice the difference some silent evening between one sock heel and the next. It has stopped being a siege. You have wintered enough. The wind still moans along the roofline, the same wind, the same moan, but somewhere in the last year it has ceased to be a message addressed to you. It is just the wind. The country has not gotten kinder. You have gotten native. And in March, on a night of softening snow, with Karen Anderson's lamp already sent for and burning toward you across 6 dark miles, your second daughter is born on Nils's pine floor before the lamp arrives. Fast, fierce, furious, undersized and unkillable, squalling before she is fully in the world, and Karen bustles in 20 minutes after to find the cord tied with clean thread, the child wrapped and roaring at your breast, the mother grey-faced and steady, and she stops in the doorway, snow on her shawl, and takes in the scene and laughs, one great chest-deep laugh, and says, "Well, I see Dakota delivered this one herself. You name her Cena. It means new victory in the old language, and you don't explain the name to anyone, and you don't have to. Every woman who hears it looks at you a half-second longer than the name requires and nods. 2 years pass. Let them pass the way they passed, which is to say, not as years, but as work. 2 more wash days 104 times. 2 more gardens, one drowned in June rain, one so abundant you buried cabbages in a straw-lined pit like treasure. 1 more hailstorm, a small one, a bully shove rather than a murder attempt, and you and Ingrid stood in the doorway and watched it come, and she held your hand and neither of you shook. And afterward she went out and gathered the stones in her apron and put them in the water pail to cool the milk. 5 years old and already making the country pay rent. 1 drought scare broken by a July soaker that had grown men standing hatless in the rain in their doorways not speaking. 1 grasshopper rumour that stayed, God be thanked, a rumour. The year the sky to the south of you glittered and hummed, and the cloud went down on the counties along the river and ate them to the fence wire and passed you by, and you learned that on the plains even your luck arrives with the sound of chewing. 2 more winters, a second child growing. Cena, who at 2 years old fears absolutely nothing, which terrifies you daily. A schoolhouse, sod, 1 room, 4 months a year, built by subscription 3 miles east, and Ingrid walks to it across the grass with the Anderson grandchildren, a line of small figures on the enormous land carrying dinner pails, and the first time you watch her go, your heart does something between breaking and taking flight, and never entirely settles back. And then it is a morning in June of 1886, and you are wearing the brown town dress with the fewest patches, and the whole family is in the wagon, the real wagon, behind the new team. Bram retired to honourable pony duty, driving not 11 miles to Millbrook, but the 2 days to Yankton, to the United States Land Office. 'Cause today, Nils proves up. The office smells of paper, ink, tobacco, and other people's sweat soaked into pine benches through 14 years of exactly this. The clerk has spectacles and a copper-plate hand and the marvellous boredom of a man who dispenses destinies by the gross. There are papers, there are witnesses, old Anderson and another neighbour, come the whole way to swear the truth of it, that the claimant has resided upon and cultivated said land for the term required by law. There's the question of improvements, and Niels lists them in his careful land office English. House, stable, well, 40 rod of fence, 60-acre broke. And you stand at his shoulder with scene on your hip, and you want, with a sudden violence that startles you, to interrupt, to make the clerk put down the true list. Say, 1 child born on this claim, and 1 buried on it. Say, 400 pounds of water a wash day, 5 years. Say, a rattlesnake killed with a hoe at 4 feet from a sleeping child. A hymn sung through a hailstorm in a hole in the ground. A floor built board by board in a dark lean-to by a man who never once said the word love in English. Improvements. You want to laugh, or possibly upend the ink over the whole ledger. You do neither. You stand like a churchgoer while the clerk's pen scratches, because you have learned what every woman of your century knew in her spine. The record will be wrong, and the work will be real, and given the choice you take the real work over the true record, though it would have been decent of history to offer both. The clerk blots the page and stamps it, and says with no more ceremony than a man selling stamps, "Patent'll come by post from Washington, next," and that's it. Outside on the boardwalk, in the Rivertown noise, Niels stands holding the receiver's receipt in both hands like it might blow away, and reads it twice, and looks up at you, and the look on his face is the boy in the Wisconsin harvest field, 11 years and 11,000 pails of sweat ago, and neither of you says anything at all, because there is nothing in either of your languages sized right for it. 160 acres, yours, against every landlord in 300 years of both your bloods, yours, stamped, sealed, forever. You celebrate, the 4 of you, with dinner at an actual hotel table, beefsteak, spring peas, white bread you didn't bake, and it costs an appalling 75 cents, and Niels pays it like a duke, and Ingrid eats with the wide-eyed precision of a girl memorizing a palace, and Sina throws a pea at a cattle buyer, who bows to her. But that is not the moment you keep. The moment you keep comes 2 evenings later on the homeward road, at the crossing of the Jim River Bluffs, the one place in 100 miles where the land consents to lift you up and show itself, where the trail climbs the shoulder of the valley and the whole country falls open below and behind, and Niels, without a word, pulls up the team at the top, at sunset, and you all climb down and stand on the grass rim and look. And there it is, the thing itself, the grass ocean, gold green and endless in the long light, the river winding down its valley in loops of fire and scattered across the immensity so small you have to hunt for them, the marks, a windmill catching the sun 8 miles off like a struck match, a line of young cottonwood somebody is coaxing up along a claim edge, threads of smoke, 4, 5, 6 of them, standing up from stovepipes you cannot see, from houses made of the ground itself, each one meaning supper, meaning a woman at a stove, this exact minute, feeding a fire with grass while the light dies, and far off northeast, past seeing but not past knowing, your own quarter section, your well, your rise with its wild roses and its small marker, your floor of pine boards waiting in the dark of your dirt house like a secret. Ingrid stands at the rim with the wind pushing her hair back, 7 years old, Dakota born in every way that matters, and she says, "Is all of it ours?" "That piece there is ours," Niels says, pointing at nothing, at distance, at Faith. "It all looks the same," she says, doubtful. "No," you hear yourself say, "it doesn't." And it doesn't. That is what the 5 years bought that the patent never mentions. Standing on this bluff, you can read the land now, the whole spread page of it. You know which shimmer is slough and which is heat. which green means water and which means alkali lying. You know what the stillness before a white sky costs and what a windmill is worth, and what each of those threads of smoke is holding up. The country that stood at your wagon side 5 years ago, enormous and illegible and indifferent, is still enormous and still indifferent. But it is not illegible. You have paid for the alphabet with your hands. So now, standing up here in the last light with your daughters and your husband and your dead son and your 160 acres all spread out in one held breath, now let me finally answer the question I hung over this whole night, the one in the title. Why couldn't you handle Wild West women? Not because they were harder than you in some way. Modern people can't be hard. Human material doesn't change. That's the whole comfort of history. You couldn't handle them because of what they carried without setting down. You have tonight, wherever you're lying, a switch on the wall that makes light, a tap that makes water, a device that summons any voice you love in 3 seconds, a room somewhere warm that stays warm by itself. Every one of those is a weight lifted off you that Ada Larson carried on her actual spine daily for decades. The water in pounds, the fire in hours, the distance in days, the silence in weeks, the medical terror raw and mediated by nothing, the grief worked into the bread because there was no other place to put it. She carried all of it at once, at 24, with no evidence it would ever end, and she got supper. Every night. That's the whole secret and the whole answer. Not fearlessness. She was afraid at all the correct moments on schedule afterward. Not toughness as the movies mean it. Just this. She never once got to put the load down, so she learned to walk with it until walking with it was simply what walking was. And then she raised daughters who watched her walk, and the daughters calibrated their whole idea of what a person can carry by watching. And that calibration came down the generations, hand to hand like the lye soap recipe, thinning as the loads lightened until it reached you, lying comfortable in the dark, listening to her story and feeling, be honest, you're feeling it now. A strange homesickness for a hardness you never had to have. That's all right. That homesickness has a use. It's the truest monument those women ever got. The light goes. The first star comes out over the valley like a well tip catching lamplight. Sina has fallen asleep against your shoulder, boneless, heavy as a full pail. Come on, Neil says softly. Long road. You climb back up. The wagon moves off the rim, north and east, into the blue dark grass toward home. And the word home settles over the claim now without one grain of irony left in it. 5 years of grinding having polished it down to plain truth. And the wheels turn, and the stars thicken. And Ingrid, lying in the wagon bed watching them, asks the ancient wagon bed question. How far is it to the end of the sky? And no one answers, and she's asleep before she notices. Let the wheels keep turning, and let the years turn with them, faster now, the way years do once the proving is done. The frame house goes up in 1889, the summer Dakota territory splits and becomes 2 states, and the day the last shingle is nailed you walk through the empty wooden rooms, 4 rooms, and upstairs glass in every window, touching the walls like a woman in a dream, and that night, the first night, you cannot sleep in it. The house creaks. The wind is loud against boards in a way it never was against 3 feet of earth. It is, you realize, lying awake in your grand new bedroom, the first night in 8 years you have slept above the ground, and some animal part of you, some part gone thoroughly badger, misses the dirt. You never tell anyone that. You're telling them now. The sod house becomes the granary, then the tool shed, then slowly, the mound it always intended to be, sinking back year by year, the walls slumping, the roof grass knitting over, until by the new century it is only a green swelling in the yard that the grandchildren roll down, shrieking, having no idea, and you stand at the kitchen window of the frame house watching them roll down the roof of the room where you sang through a fever, where a floor was laid at Christmas, where Cena came roaring into the world ahead of the lamp, and you dry the same cup for 5 minutes watching. Cena grows up exactly as advertised, fears nothing, marries a Swede. Her grandmother in Wisconsin does not entirely recover, and files on a claim with him further west, in the dry country. Second verse, same as the first, and comes back to visit with hands you inspect the moment she's off the train, turning them palm up in the depot, reading the ledger, and finding it kept. Ingrid becomes, of course it was always coming. You saw it the day she walked off across the grass with her dinner pail, a teacher, and then the world turning. Something the world has only just invented. A county superintendent of schools, a woman with an office and a salary, and a horse she drives alone across 4 townships in all weathers, inspecting sod schoolhouses, boarding with strangers, competent in rooms full of school board men who address their answers to each other until one by one, meeting after meeting, they stop. In 1918, she writes you a letter on official stationery that begins, "Mama, they have passed it. We can vote, and you are 60 years old, and you walk out to the rise where the wild roses grow. You are a great walker out to the rise in your age. The family accommodates it. And you stand at the marker, grey wood now, the name almost weathered out, but you know where every letter was, and you tell your son the news, and the wind moves the grass, the same wind, the same grass, and for once, that one morning, it sounds like applause." Niels dies in 1921, in October, in the frame house, in bed, an old full man with his boots off and his family around him, which on the ledger of frontier deaths is a first prize ending, and you know it, and it helps not at all. The neighbours come for miles, of course. The county paper prints 11 lines. Pioneer settler, respected farmer, survived by. 11 lines. You could write 11,000 and not reach the pine floor. And you live on. Because that was always the pattern out here. The women lasted. Walk any prairie graveyard and read the dates. The wives outlasting the husbands by 10 years, 15, 20, all across the grass, a whole final generation of old women alone in frame houses with their memories and their hands. You live with Ingrid in town in the end, in a bungalow with a furnace and electric light and water that comes out of the wall, hot at a touch. And here is the last confession of the night. The one your granddaughters tease you about for years. You never quite trust it. The tap, 70 years old, 80, and every time you draw a bath, some voice at the bottom of you counts the pails. 50 gallons, 400 pounds, 140 steps. The body keeps the old books long after the account is closed. Some nights, old and comfortable and warm, you lie in the electric dark of the bungalow and you can't sleep. Old women sleep badly. It's the last of the frontier in them. Some sentry that stood watch too many years and never fully got the order to stand down. And on those nights you do a thing you've never told anyone, and it works every time. And because it works, and because you were real, and because 100,000 women like you were real, and this was, in one form or another, all of theirs too, I'm going to give it to you now, tonight, to keep. You go back to the claim, not the hard days. Sleep won't come by way of the hard days. You go back to one particular kind of evening, and there were hundreds of them, so it's less a memory than a place. A summer evening on the claim with the chores done, That's the whole secret of it, with the chores done. The words themselves are half the spell. So build it now, wherever you are, as she built it, slowly, piece by piece. It is July, and it is nearly dark. The supper dishes are washed and turned down on the towel. The milk is strained and cooling down the well on its rope. The hens are shut in, muttering themselves down to sleep. The stock is watered. The bread sponge is set for morning, covered with a cloth, already beginning its slow, secret work in the warm dark by the stove. There is nothing left to do. Feel how strange and soft those words land in a life like hers. Nothing left to do. The list that has been running in her head since 3:30 this morning, since the year 1881. The list is, for this 1 hour, empty, and the emptiness is not the terrible prairie emptiness. It is the other kind, the earned kind. She is sitting on the doorstep of the sod house. The stone of the step still holds the day's warmth, and it comes up through her skirts, gentle, like something breathing. Her back rests against the door frame. Her hands, the Dakota hands, the ledger hands, her hands are lying open in her lap, doing nothing, and they ache. But it is the low, sweet ache of work completed, an ache with the whole night ahead of it to fade in. The heat is going out of the day. You can feel the exact seam of it, the cool rising off the grass while the ground still radiates warm, two temperatures moving through each other like currents in a river. The air smells of cooling earth, of the well's mineral breath, of hay curing somewhere, of the sweet clover along the path, and faintly from inside, of bread. The light is going the way it goes out there, which is slowly, generously, the sky staying luminous long after the ground is dark, green gold in the west, fading up through rose into a blue that gets deeper the longer you look, and the first stars arriving not all at once but one at a time, deliberately, like neighbours. Inside the house, one lamp is burning low, and the children are asleep. She can hear them. That is the centre of the whole spell, so rest there a moment. The sound of children breathing in a safe house, slow and even, two small tides, and beneath them the tick of the cooling stove, and beneath that, nothing. The day's whole clamour gone. Pails and hens and wind and worry, all of it set down, all of it done. Far off, a coyote. But even that tonight is only distance made audible. Nothing out there is coming here. The door has a bar, and the bar is not even in its brackets. It's that kind of night. And the wind. The wind has dropped to its evening walk, moving through the grass in long, slow breaths. Hush and hush and hush. The sound the grass has made every evening for 10,000 years. Before her, after her, before you, after you. The oldest lullaby on the continent, and she sits on the warm stone in the blue dark and lets it move through her, breath by breath, hush by hush, and her eyes grow heavy. Let yours grow heavy with them. The day is done. Say it the way she'd say it, plain, itemized, true. The water is carried, the fire is banked, the bread is rising, the children are breathing, the door is safe, the work is done, all of it, every task, and there is nothing left to carry tonight. You can put it down now. Whatever you hauled today, whatever you hauled this year, set the pails on the step. Open your hands in your lap. Let them ache, and let the ache begin to fade, the way it does, the way it always does, with the whole night ahead of it. The stars are all the way out now. The Milky Way stands over the claim like a snowdrift, like spilled flour, like something gently broken and scattered just for the beauty of it, and the grass says hush, and the stove ticks slower and slower, and the warm stone breathes up through you, and the lamp inside is turned so low it is barely a colour, and sleep is coming across the land the way evening comes out there, not falling, rising, coming up out of the ground itself, up through the warm stone, soft and enormous, and older than any trouble you have ever had. Let it come. Let it take you the way it took her, 100 years of evenings ago, on a doorstep in the grass ocean, with everything done and everyone safe. Let the world get bigger and darker and quieter around you, and let yourself get smaller and warmer inside it. One small breathing thing at the bottom of a bowl of stars, which is all any of us ever were out there, and it was enough. It was always enough. She'd tell you so herself if she could see you now, lying easy in the warm with water in the walls and light in a switch and no cow calling you at dawn. She'd look you over the way Karen Anderson read a pair of hands, and she'd nod once and she'd say, "You're all right. The fire's banked, the children are breathing. Rest now. You've earned this rest. Take it." And dream of long grass and slow wind and lamplight in a window that is always, no matter how far you've come, 140 steps from Sweetwater. Good night.